national security and AI, if we could. Mr. Amodei, to come back to you, you mentioned in your written testimony, in your policy recommendations, your first recommendation, in fact, is the United States must secure the AI supply chain. And then you mentioned immediately, as an example of this, chips used for training AI systems. Where are most of the chips made now? I think your microphone, I think maybe. That's okay. Everyone's eager to hear what you have to say. Go ahead.
Yes, what I had in mind here, yes, is that there are certain bottlenecks in the production of AI systems. That ranges from semiconductor manufacturing equipment to chips to the actual produced systems, which then have to be stored on a server somewhere, and in theory could be stolen or released in an uncontrolled way. So I think, compared to some of the more software elements, those are areas where there are substantially more bottlenecks.
Well, okay, understood. But we've heard a lot about chips, GPUs, about the shortage of them. My question is, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, maybe somebody else does, but do you know where most of them are currently manufactured?
Yeah, there are a number of steps in the production process for chips, right? Do you produce the raw chip or the actual GPU? Those happen in a number of places.
For example?
An important player on the kind of like making the base fabrication side would be TSMC, which is in Taiwan, and then within companies like NVIDIA within the United States, then produce those into GPUs. And I don't know exactly where that process happens. It could be in a large number of places.
As part of securing our supply chain here in this area, should we consider limitations, if not outright prohibitions, on components that are manufactured in China?
I think on that particular issue, that's not one where I have a huge amount of knowledge. I mean, I think we should think a little bit in the other direction of, are things that are produced by our supply chain, do they end up in places that we don't want them to be? So we've worried a lot about that in the context of models. We just had a blog post out today about AI models saying, hey, you might have spent a large number of millions of dollars, maybe someday it's going to be billions of dollars, to train an AI system, and then you don't want some state actor or criminal or rogue organization to then steal that and use it in some irresponsible way that you don't endorse.
Let me get at this problem from a just slightly different angle, which is, let's imagine a hypothetical in which the communist government of Beijing decides to launch an invasion of Taiwan. And let's imagine, and sadly it doesn't take very much imagination, let's imagine that they're successful in doing so. Just give me a back-of-the-envelope forecast. What might that do to AI production?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not an economist, and it's hard to forecast, but a very large fraction of the chips are indeed, somewhere go through the supply chain in Taiwan. So I think there's no doubt that is a hot spot, and something that we should be concerned about for sure.
Do either of the other panelists want to say anything on this about Professor Russell, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, there are studies. My colleague Orville Schell, who's a China expert, has been working on a study of these issues. There are already plans to diversify away from Taiwan. TSMC is trying to create a plant in the U.S. Intel is now building some very large plants in the U.S. and in Germany, I believe. So, but it's taking time. I think if the invasion that you mentioned happened tomorrow, we would be in a huge amount of trouble. As far as I understand it, there are plans to sabotage all the TSMC operations in Taiwan if an invasion were to take place. So it's not that all that capacity would then be taken over by China.
What's sad about that scenario is that would be the best case scenario, right? I mean, if there's an invasion of Taiwan, the best we could hope for is maybe all of their capacity or most of it gets sabotaged, and maybe the whole world has to be in the dark for however long. That's the best case scenario. The point I'm trying to make is I think your point, Mr. Amodei, about securing our supply chains is absolutely critical. and thinking very seriously about decoupling efforts, strategic decoupling efforts, I think is absolutely vital at every point of the supply chain that we can. And I think if we don't do that with China soon, frankly, we should have done it a long time ago. If we don't do it very, very quickly, I think we're in real trouble, and I think we've got to think seriously about what may happen in the event of a Taiwan invasion. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to emphasize Professor Russell's point even more strongly, that we are trying to move some of the chip fab production capabilities to the U.S., but that needs to be faster, right? We're talking about 2 to 3 years for some of these very scary applications, and maybe not much longer than that for truly autonomous AI. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the timelines for moving these production facilities look more like 5 years, 7 years, and we've only started on a small component of them. So just to emphasize this, I think this is absolutely essential.
Yeah, good.